Whatever came back with me wasn't my daughter. By Redditor Haley Jade 101. Whatever came back with me wasn't my daughter. At first I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me, but now I'm not so sure. I don't know if it was her eyes, hair or facial expressions that were off, but I do know that whatever came back with me isn't my daughter. My daughter, Savannah, was a bright and cheery little girl. She had the most beautiful auburn hair and the cutest little freckles. She also was an avid hiker and couldn't stand to be cooped up indoors. There was so much kindness into that child that many people would ask for parenting advice. The truth is, I didn't teach her. It was just her. She would never even hurt a fly. That's why I don't know how this could have happened to her. Savannah asked, for her 15th birthday, for a hiking trip with just me and her. I of course said yes because we needed to catch up on some things and it would be a nice getaway from our bustling town. She insisted on packing the Jeep the night before and laying out our clothes for the next day. You could just tell how excited she was by looking at her. The next morning I woke up to the smell of funfetti pancakes and freshly brewed coffee. Savannah beat me to making breakfast. When I made it downstairs I saw her setting the table, wearing her favorite blue hiking outfit. Then I noticed how big she smiled. It was on such a rare occasion that she smiled, it felt like I struck gold. She rushed me to my seat and basically ate her food whole. The whole time I was eating she kept bugging me to hurry up. This is what I enjoyed most about Savannah. She was so fast about things and didn't play around. If I told her to clean her room, it was done in 15 minutes. But it was also a problem because she didn't think before she did things. That was her biggest, if not, only flaw. Anyway, we headed out at around 9 a.m. and didn't stop until we got there. We sang our favorite songs the whole way. Boy, do I miss her sweet voice singing Country Road. When we made it, Savannah threw on her hiking back and had it buckled in 2 minutes. I was impressed. We hiked about 2 miles into a small clearing surrounded by trees. I asked Savannah if she was sure that she didn't want to stay at a campground. She replied, yes, I'm sure. We stay at those all the time and the other campers scare off the animals. I actually want to see them this time. I remember this exactly. That night, after we put up the tent, I built a fire for us to have s'mores on. For the most part we talked about all the animals we saw and how it was so peaceful. I noticed Savannah was looking a little bit down and asked her, are you okay? She replied how she was fine. Just then, I heard some rustling in the woods and a croaky voice say, why you, okay? I stood up about to go in full attack mode. I yelled, who's out there? Don't come any closer. I pulled out my pistol, about ready to blow the head off of whatever was there. When the voice replied, don't come any closer, who's there? It was so strained like it didn't know what those words meant. And it put emphasis on the wrong parts of the sentences. I told Savannah to get in the tent and she did so very quickly. I kept my gun drawn towards the woods and screamed, get the fuck away or I'll blow your head off. I heard what sounded like more rustling and then it was silent. I made sure it was gone, then told Savannah she could come out. What was that? She asked. I told her I didn't know, but it didn't sound human. I told her that we would sleep there that night, but first thing next morning we were going to the campground. I laid down next to her that night and she asked me what if that person comes back. I smoothed down her, now frizzy, hair and said I don't think they will if they have any sense. Besides, it was probably a druggie or some kids playing a prank. She said okay and quickly drifted off to sleep, and so did I. When I awoke the fire was embers and the sun was just starting to rise. I noticed that Savannah was gone, but I heard our gear clanking outside, so I figured she was packing up. I spent a couple more minutes in the tent and finally forced myself to get out. When I stepped out, I saw Savannah rummaging through one of our bags. I said to her, morning. I see you got an early start. She turned to me with the most wild eyes ever and said, early start. I walked over to her, are you okay? She kinda looked at me for a couple of seconds and whispered, okay. I figured she was kind of shaken up from the night before, so I let her be. As I was packing up, I noticed how she watched me. It was eerie, so I told her to stop and to help me pack up. She did, but not as fast as usual, and often copied what I did. I would pick up a bag and so would she. I would put on my shoe and so would she. It was quite odd. On the way back to Jeep, she stayed a few feet behind me just watching. This was not like her, as she would rush to the Jeep and be waiting on me. I had to open the door for her and buckle her up. It was so weird. As we were pulling out, I told her that the campground was closed off because of some crazy guy. Which was true. Police roped it off because a guy tried to stab his wife. I thought she wasn't listening, so I did the normal annoyed hello. Savannah looked at me with the most wild eyes I had ever seen and said, "Hello, are you okay?" I told her of course I was, and that she was the one acting weird. She turned around and looked out the window. "Hello, CAMP, hello, okay." When I took her home, she acted as if it was so new. I was really worried, so I called our family doctor. He told me she probably was having PTSD because that can cause a person to scramble their words. I left her be and figured that she could deal with it on her own. Don't get me wrong, I tried helping her, but the most I could get out of her was hello, okay, camp. She looked so empty and frightened. Her eyes didn't seem like it was her anymore. I didn't know what to do. For the first couple of days she just said hello, camp, and okay. She finally picked up the word car, but rarely used it. Then she just went silent and stayed silent for the next 3 months. Her grades started slipping, and whenever I grounded her it didn't help. She hadn't even touched her phone or watched TV since we came back. I thought my daughter was crazy. One day I decided that I should go to church and pray for my sweet little girl to come back. I prayed hard and sent out prayer requests everywhere. This one woman, who never talked to me before, came up to me when church ended and said, "I'm so sorry about your daughter. It really is a shame, she was so sweet. But, I wanted to ask you, did you happen to go hiking in, insert my state park name?" I was shocked and said yes. She invited me to eat dinner because she had so much to tell me. I made sure Savannah was in bed, but I knew she wouldn't sleep because she hadn't since we came home from that hiking trip. She hadn't ate either. I figured she was doing it without me watching for some reason. Anyway, I went to the Italian restaurant we had agreed to meet at and found the woman. She said her name was Kathy, at a booth shoved in the corner. After ordering food and drinks, Kathy started telling me stuff that I wouldn't have believed or even listened to before our hiking trip. But now I was desperate. She started out my cousins went on those trips high into the mountains. They were all boys, but my sister and I sometimes tagged along. We were told by our folks to always stay near the campground every time, but my cousins were teenage boys and were at their height of rebellion. They were stupid. Actually, we were stupid. We often strayed away from the campgrounds to go to some caves and abandoned houses that are scattered all over the place. Hell, it was the 1987 and I was only 10. Well, one particular night when we were at an abandoned house, we started hearing this raspy voice. I don't remember what it said, but it was copying us. After a while of my older cousins screaming at it to go away, it started chasing us. I've never ran so fast in my life. We lost Greg. We were so worried, but we found him the next morning and he looked like shit. He was different, he babbled random words and eventually went completely quiet. He didn't talk until much later and tried going back to normal. Auntie didn't believe it though and asked him questions that only the real Greg would know. He didn't. He still lives with Auntie, but she knows it isn't the real him. I took a sip from my drink and finally choked out, "You mean he started talking again and started doing things?" She shook her head yes, but it wasn't the real him. He didn't like the same things and was completely different. I was hoping that Savannah would go back to her normal self, so I asked, "What did your Auntie do to make him talk?" She leaned in closer and whispered, "I think she talked about taking him back to the woods." You have to listen to me though. Make Savannah talk and ask her questions that only the real Savannah would know. If she answers them wrong, call a priest. It's too late for Greg, but they can probably save Savannah. We ended our dinner and headed home to find Savannah out of bed. The next morning, as Savannah sulked around looking at everything, I took Kathy's advice. "Savannah, I forgot your best friend's last name and I want to put her mom in my contacts." "What was it again?" She just looked at me as usual and returned to her plunging. I thought about what Kathy had said about the woods, so I said a little louder, I thought about going camping again. I want to go to the same spot we were at last time because it was so peaceful. Does that sound like fun? Savannah spun around quickly and hissed at me, no. Why would I want to do that? These were the first words that came from her mouth in a long time. I was about to jump for joy, but I kept calm. Well, I thought since you like hiking and all. I replied. She cringed at me. I hate the outdoors. You should know that. First red flag. I patted her back and said, first words I've heard out of you in a while. Anyway, what was your friend's last name again? Savannah crossed her arms. It's Vance. For me, I thought it was the real her, but anybody could have picked that up at school, so I threw the biggest question I could think of at her. Your dad is coming home tomorrow. Are you excited? She smiled. Of course I am. There was only one problem with this. Her dad died 2 years ago in a car accident, and that was why she rarely smiled. I told her she could continue what she was doing. I'm so worried I'll never get my baby back. She's so different and distant. Whatever happened to her in the woods must have caused this. Maybe she is still out there somewhere and is all alone. I'm calling the priest tomorrow and I'll keep you updated. For now, I'm going to pretend like nothing is wrong. Do you guys know what could have happened?